Frescoes, Cookbook, and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And I just want to read for the audience the actual language of the pardon clause in the Constitution, so we'll all have that going into this discussion. It simply says, he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. And Professor Tribe, I'm leaning strongly toward the idea that this president can pardon himself, because this clause does not say that he cannot. And the majority conservative justices on the Supreme Court, most of whom think of themselves as what they call originalists, would look to that language and find nothing in that language that bars the president from pardoning himself. So that's where I begin on this subject. Now I'm taking notes, because now I'm going to get a free Harvard Law School class.
Well, the justices would begin there, just as you would, but they wouldn't stop there. They would also notice that in the very next section of Article 2, Section 3, it says explicitly, the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It doesn't say except the criminal laws. It doesn't say except when he chooses to violate the criminal laws. Now, if it were true, as Donald Trump said in the little segment you played, that the president has the absolute power to grant himself a power of pardon, to grant himself a pardon, which would be an odd way for the framers to have put it. You grant things to other people. If he had the absolute power to grant himself a pardon, and if he knew that throughout his presidency, and if all presidents knew it, what would follow is that presidents do not have to follow the law. They can't be, according to the Justice Department, indicted while they're in office. And if at any time they could pardon themselves, it could be a secret pardon, stick it in the Resolute desk, or at the very last hour of his presidency, he could say, oh, by the way, I hereby pardon myself for any federal crime I might have committed from the moment I took the oath. If that were the case, then the president would not be below the law, he'd be above it. He couldn't be prosecuted criminally, even if, let's say, he took Steve Bannon's advice when Bannon, a month ago, posted a video on Facebook recommending that we behead the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, and that we behead Tony Fauci. The president, has said he could just shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. This would make that literally true. There would be no limit. Every president would know from the very moment puts his hand on that Bible and takes the oath that whatever he does or she does during the 4-year term of that presidency could not be criminally prosecuted, either during the presidency or ever in the future, because the pardon would cover everything that president had done. Now, we know that the framers didn't bother saying that the president cannot grant himself a pardon because no one in their right mind would have imagined otherwise. They talked in the Constitutional Convention and in the Federalist Papers about the danger that the president might pardon his cronies, the people who might help him get away with impeachable offenses. They debated whether he should be able to do that. They concluded that they would not put any language in the pardon power itself to prevent that. But there wasn't a whisper of a suggestion that the president could simply make himself immune to the criminal laws of the United States. On the contrary, they had just fought a revolution in the wake of George III exercising extraordinary power. But even he didn't have the power to murder people and get away with it during the time that he was the king. Magna Carta set the baseline in the year 1215 that nobody is above the law. Now, why hasn't the Supreme Court yet spoken on it? Easy answer. No president has dared try it, but let him dare try it. The Supreme Court, even a really conservative court, reading the language, the president can grant pardons, and looking at the history and looking at the centuries-old history that people aren't to be their own judges, would have to conclude that either presidents can get away with murder literally during the presidency and forever after because they can pardon themselves, or we have to look at Section 3, which says the president must faithfully execute the law and treat that as limiting what Section 2 says about the pardon power. The Constitution has lots of powers that don't contain their own limits within their four corners, but you look at the whole Constitution and its history and the history of the American Revolution to understand what it means. That's why I think any argument that the president can grant himself a pardon would be incoherent, incompatible with the history of the Constitution, with the language of Section 3, and with the principle that no one is above the law. And even the president himself in that segment you quoted said, "Oh, I'm not above the law, except I am, because I can pardon myself." You can't have it both ways.
It is Friday, the 4th of December of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is, oh yes, it's a liquid diet, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, the French 77s are virtually poured and ready for your imbibing pleasure, so please do imbibe. But take care, even in the virtual world, if you drink too, you might be pinned to wherever it is in the virtual world you are. In the real world, it'll be more than pinned. Yeah, you'll be nailed. Oh my God. Anyway, it is the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails, so take care. It'll sneak up on you. So tasty. Well, we made it to the weekend, and I came across a little news item that was very interesting. There was front pages of newspapers from across the country, and guess what? For the first time, there was no news article about Trump on the front page. Historical, I would say. You know, he could be a footnote to history, but we should never forget what the hell just happened. Because I actually have a suspicion that what the hell just happened is going to keep happening. Especially if we let them get away with it again. You know, what are we going to do? Start naming military bases after Trump people who went to jail? Yeah, okay. There's the Gates military base over there in Virginia. And the Michael Flynn base. I don't know, the Michael Flynn Air Base. Which just reminded me, what the hell are we going to do with this Space Force BS? Put it back into the Air Force like it was supposed to be. Damn it. Space Force. What a bunch of comic book BS. And you would expect it from the guy that just is getting kicked out right now. So, lots of news happening in the world. And we have some of it curated for you today, as a matter of fact, indeed. But I want to mention the wildfires in Orange County. Yikes, once again. And this is a little bit more involved with the urban part of the urban wildland interface, as they say, because we're right down into the suburbs. Quite scary. And the Santa Anas, some people call them Santanas, because they're devil winds. Okay, they're not a saint wind of Anna. They're a devil wind. Anyway, these heavy desert winds that come in off the desert, well, they are fanning the flames literally. And so hopefully these winds will be dying down today. They can get a handle on this. My elderly father lives in Fullerton, Placentia, Yorba Linda, that area, if you're familiar with North Orange County. And I don't like the idea that he has to deal with not only breathing COVID, but, smoke again. Let alone the fear that if this thing gets out of hand, he could be evacuated. I mean, it's quite far, but, there's they don't call it the Yorba Linda Hills and Carbon Canyon Hills and all that for nothing. Yikes. Yeah, if those hills above Yorba Linda and all those go up, there's a lot of oil derricks still there, pumps. Even the ones that aren't working anymore can be a problem. So, yeah, that could be quite an issue, and I worry. And it also brings to mind the fact that I can't visit my dad. And I get attacked by people, oh, just because you're afraid. Yeah, maybe I'm afraid of, well, first of all, his facility wouldn't allow it. Are they afraid? Maybe of liability cases for allowing people to infect their residents, even by accident. So, what happens when it's on purpose? A couple flying into Hawaii had COVID-19, knew about it, went anyway, and now they're being charged with manslaughter or attempt to manslaughter. Thank you very much. It's a felony charge. So there. And as well it should be. I don't know if it's actually they're charged with attempt to manslaughter. I think there's another term. But I've been pushing for this quite a bit. I've told people, and I think that I'm correct in the assessment of this law, that if you purposely infect someone knowing that you have something, you are criminally liable. Not only civil, but criminally liable. And the case law is already clear how many people have gone to jail knowing they had AIDS and had sex with people. Well, I rest my case. After all, Justice is only my middle name. My first name is Royal, and we don't want to go there. No, we're a representative democracy, and well, we should, because even I know I wouldn't want to be poet, philosopher, king, and by edict telling everybody what to do, because then it could be my capricious nature involved here, and the reason that you have a representative democracy is to, well, mute the capriciousness. On the other hand, a mob is a mob, but there you go. So what's on the rest of the menu here at the Bistro Cafe as we start? At the top, well, the only reason Trump thinks he can pardon himself is because he hasn't gotten to Section 3 of Article 2 in the Constitution that stipulates the president shall take care to obey and uphold the laws of the United States. And Lawrence Tribe ought to know he teaches at Harvard. Indeed. On the rest of the menu, a Trump aide is banned from the Justice Department after she was caught trying to collect insider information about ongoing cases. I told you, they're crooks. Trump is rushing to auction off the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drillers before Biden takes office. And Congress already said he can't do it, but he says, I don't care. Well, he doesn't. Never has. And the Supreme Court sided with a California church that it has the constitutional religious right to ignore science and kill people with COVID-19. Well, I don't know. When you start teaching American civics in the churches, this is what you get. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Egyptian authorities released 3 members of a leading human rights organization following widespread international criticism. Turn on the light. It is an antiseptic, it really is. And an Italian judge ordered the mass trial of 444 gangsters of the powerful Calabrian Mafia. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, even in these times of dire. So please go ahead and chat. To the leftish of that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, off to the leftish there, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your generosity allows us to pay our bills and fly under the radar and get all the needed machinery and attendant software needed so that we can fly under the radar and continue resisting this terrible attack on our government and our way of life. How dare they? If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, remember when we could do that with impunity? Well, if you could afford to do that, or sometime in the future, that amount of money allows us to be able to stretch those dollars beyond compare. I'll get it out. And once again, pay our bills. And we are able to do that because of you, and thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. And Tom takes care of that, and we thank Tom for that and so much more. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that posted up on social media, on all platforms like Twitter, for instance, and others. You know the ones. Okay, I got 5 days left until I get to go back on Facebook and be on there for, I don't know, anywhere from a week to a couple of months, and they'll suspend me again for no reason. Completely the opposite of what I would do. What I've done. I'm sorry, Facebook. I think your algorithm is tilted a little bit to the right there. Really to the right. Anyway, you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. I still haven't heard any resolution about what's going on with Stitcher and the live stream. Got word that the Stitcher had upgraded somewhere, and they were unable to pick up the live stream, or they're not carrying it, or whatever. So Tom's taking a look at that, and we'll figure out what to do with Stitcher in terms of live stream. And you can always tune in on TuneIn, but you could also go and Apple Radio, you can do that. But we have a homepage, netrootsradio.com. There's a player right there. Okay. Alrighty, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. And it comes out of the AP and the journalists are Michael Balsamo and Zeke Miller. The official, serving as Donald Trump's eyes and ears at the Justice Department, has been banned from the building after trying to pressure staffers to give up sensitive information about election fraud and other matters she could relay to the White House. 3 people familiar with the matter tell the AP. What if she's trying to get insider information about, I don't know, Russian mobsters who are under investigation? I wonder if it could be that too. Well, Heidi Stirrup, I know, Stirrup. I know. That's her name. They didn't make it up. It's right out of, Central Casting. Well, she's an ally of Trump advisor Stephen Santa Monica Goebbels Miller. And she was quietly installed at the Justice Department as a White House liaison a few months ago on the hush-hush. She was told within the last 2 weeks to vacate the building after top justice officials learned of her efforts to collect insider information about ongoing cases and the department's work on election fraud. Stirrup is accused of approaching staffers in the department, demanding they give her information about investigations, including election fraud matters. And the people who released this information to the AP spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to publicly discuss the matter. And also they probably don't want to have, death threats directed to their grandma and their great-grandma if they're still alive. Stirrup is accused. Let's scroll down. Let's get to this paragraph. Here it is. The effort came as Trump continues to level baseless claims that he won the election and alleges without evidence that massive voting fraud was responsible for his defeat to President-elect Joe Biden. Well, thank you, AP, for putting it clear there. All right, no quibbling. Stirrup had also extended job offers to political allies for positions at some of the highest levels of the Justice Department without consulting any senior department officials or the White House counsel's office, and also attempted to interfere in the hiring process for career staffers, which is, of course, a violation of the government's human resources policies. But when you're a Nazi and you're trying to overthrow the government, do you really care about what the law is? They now call themselves Reuters staff, but I will always call them anonymous worker bees at Reuters. And they bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. The Trump administration yesterday, Thursday, said it would issue a sale notice for oil leases in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge next week, putting it on track to hold a drilling auction in the ecologically sensitive area shortly before President-elect Joe Biden takes office, because these are saboteurs to democracy. Why are they not in jail? Excuse me for being pedantic. For those who are offended by my pedantic nature, it's just a joke. Really, just a joke. I'm trying out their little gambit, but we'll see. But anyway, if we're going to get rid of this sentiment in our body politic, we better start thinking a little bit more how post-World War II Germany attended to it. They outlawed things that we would consider to be an infringement on free speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. I know that all the theaters are no longer crowded, but you get the meaning, all right? Or I don't know, maybe it's you can't yell fire in a crowded church. Maybe people will understand that one. Anyway, there are limits to what you can say. There are limits in what you can in sight. So please, maybe we need to denazify America and really work hard at it. And I swear to God, we better not have a Stephen Miller military base somewhere. Oh, we have to reach across the aisle. Every time we reach across the aisle, we get slapped. How many more times do we have to put up with this? Why do we have to be the bottoms? Huh? I'm not saying being a top that you got to slap people around. But, a little benevolent firmness might work. It's about time we started it. Excuse me for being pedantic. It's just a joke. The move is the latest step toward pulling off the first ever sale of oil and gas leases in a pristine area of the Arctic. Before Biden, as if you didn't know he was a Democrat, but they have to put it in this article, opposes energy development there, and he becomes president on January 20th. Opening ANWR to drilling is an important pillar of outgoing Republican guy installed in the Oval Office by Vlad, Donald Trump's agenda. We don't ever want to use the P word with Donald Trump, okay? Just don't. But green groups and Democrats have cast it as a giveaway to big oil that would harm the Arctic's unique ecosystem and native people. I should add that many, many companies, financial institutions don't want any part of this. Bank of America and others, I think Citibank, which we always have known as Shitty Bank, some of the more conservative corporations like that and financial institutions are not going to finance and put any money into any oil leases in ANWR. So when some company in Texas wins the auction to open up a bunch of leases, oftentimes they do it on spec. And there's not going to be a bank for them to borrow against because they don't want any part of it, because they know, well, with the Biden administration, I think maybe people are going to start following the law and acting a little bit more responsible to the world, if not just themselves. The sale notice will be published on Monday, setting up a sale to be held on January 6th via video live stream, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management said in a statement. The announcement comes a little more than 2 weeks after Trump's Republican administration issued a request to energy companies to identify what specific areas in the refuge should be offered for sale, because they don't even know themselves, because they've gotten rid of all the scientists, like geologists and stuff. The companies have 30 days to respond, and a sale notice is not expected to be issued until the end of that period. The Trump administration is hell-bent on selling off the Arctic refuge on its way out the door, rules be damned. Matt Lee Ashley, a senior fellow at the liberal think tank Center for American Progress, said, holding a lease sale is just one of many steps in energy development, and oil and gas companies would have several big obstacles to overcome before any wells could be drilled. It takes typically several weeks for leases to be issued once a sale is held, a formality that could fall to the next administration. Well, I bet Moscow Mitch McConnell is thinking of a way to prevent anybody from stopping that, probably, because, he's the Grim Reaper. In addition, environmentalists, native groups, and Democratic-led states have filed 4 lawsuits aimed at stopping drilling in ANWR. They are currently weighing their legal options now that a sale appears likely. And finally, as I mentioned, several major U.S. banks said they will not finance oil and gas projects in the Arctic region. Shirley of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday, Thursday, delivered a blow to California Governor Gavin Newsom's pandemic-related ban on indoor religious services, siding with a church that defied the policy and challenged it as unconstitutional religious discrimination. Yes, that's right. They have a constitutional right to gather, spread the disease amongst themselves and in the community, thereby killing people because of a God-given right? Am I being pedantic? I'm not joking now. The decision followed a similar action by the justices on November 25th that backed Christian and Jewish houses of worship that challenged New York state restrictions in coronavirus hotspots. The justices, with no noted dissents, set aside a lower court ruling that rejected a challenge to Newsom's policy by Harvest Rock Church, Inc. You heard that right. Incorporated. Religious rights extended to a company. Oh, that's right, Hobby Lobby, I forget. They're a church and a business. And that's an association of churches. Both are based in Pasadena, which is, if you didn't know, a city in Los Angeles County. Wow. I don't know. Maybe people haven't been learning geography lately. The justices directed the lower court to reconsider the case in light of their ruling in the New York case. California's pandemic-related restrictions have evolved throughout the year. Newsom initially ordered houses of worship to be closed completely in March as part of a broad stay-at-home directive. Some restrictions were lifted in the spring, but new curbs were introduced in July after a surge in cases, which was when Harvest Rock Church, Inc. first sued. The state's current plan imposed county-specific limits based on the number of COVID-19 cases. Under the policy, houses of worship in the worst-hit areas could not hold indoor gatherings, but could do so outdoors. In other counties, houses of worship could have indoor events with capacity restrictions. The state imposed similar restrictions on what it called comparable businesses and activities, such as museums, movie theaters, and restaurants that also draw crowds of people, almost religiously. In the New York case, the justices said the New York restrictions single out houses of worship for especially harsh treatment, in part by allowing various businesses to operate indoors without the same occupancy restriction. You sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. Okay, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, more Munchausen. Prior to a disturbing episode of The X-Files in the 90s, it's doubtful that Munchausen syndrome by proxy was known to anyone outside a small cadre of mental health professionals. Since then, though, it's become a go-to plot device. Think The Sixth Sense, Everything, Everything, or the series Sharp Objects. The movie Run opens with Diane, a tearful mother, briefly eyeing a premature baby in a hospital ward before the action fast-forwards 17 years to find Chloe, a well-adjusted but seriously disabled teen, living with Mom in a small town in Washington State. Chloe is awaiting college acceptance letters as she begins to notice little things and add them up. Mom's attention to mail delivery, discrepancies with her prescriptions, mysterious internet outages, etc. Director and screenwriter Anish Chaganty, who gave us 2018's well-received Searching, slowly ramps up Mom's crazy as Chloe is forced to take increasingly desperate action to save herself and expose Diane. Like most thrillers, one can question the timing of certain insights and the visibility of some twists, but make no mistake, there are jump tricks and things you won't see coming, plus a mildly devilish epilogue. Part of what drives this one are the performances of the two leads. Sarah Paulson continues her recent run of portrayals of unsettling women, and you'll admire the physicality of newcomer Kiera Allen playing the disabled Chloe, until you admire her even more after finding out that she really is disabled, making her the first actress since Susan Peters in 1948 to star in a film from a wheelchair. While thriller aficionados might have some gripes around the edges, Run hasn't become the most viewed movie ever on its exclusive platform Hulu without reason. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Much like modern humans, the Neanderthals roamed widely throughout Europe. We know this because they left behind extensive evidence, usually bones or tools. But their cousins, the Denisovans, are more mysterious. Until recently, they were conclusively linked only to a single cave in southern Siberia called Denisova Cave, which lies between Kazakhstan and Mongolia. In that cave, scientists had found a finger bone, 3 teeth, and a piece of skull, which tipped them off to the existence of a whole new lineage of ancient human. Now scientists have uncovered more of the range of the Denisovans, says Diendo Masilani of the Max Planck Institute in Germany. His team turned up evidence the ancient humans occupied a high mountain cave on the Tibetan plateau called Baishia Cave.
The cave belongs to monks, and monks think that it's a very holy place.
In fact, a monk found a piece of jawbone there in 1980, which has been tenuously linked to the Denisovans. But Masilani and his team have now unearthed more conclusive evidence by sifting through cave sediments and sequencing the genetic evidence the Denisovans left behind.
Body decay or people just being there on the site, like bleeding there or pooping, peeing there, they could left their DNA.
The DNA appears in layers, suggesting the Denisovans inhabited the cave as far back as 100,000 years ago, as well as at 60,000 years ago, and perhaps even as recently as 45,000 years ago, meaning the Denisovans might have overlapped in this region with modern humans. The results appear in the journal Science. Masilani says this method could enable more Denisovan detective work too.
There's like so many caves when we have evidence of human activity, but we don't have hominin remain. So if we can exploit the sediment, we can actually start to track down in the sediment the Denisova DNA.
Denisovans live on today in the genomes of some modern-day humans from the South Pacific. Further genetic work like this might give scientists more clues where early Homo sapiens first met and mixed with the elusive Denisovans. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Top regulatory officials in Trump's government keep chanting the same one-word mantra: deregulate, deregulate, deregulate. Day after day, these agency bosses have been liberating greedy business interests to do their damnedest to us consumers, workers, the environment, and even to our chicken dinner. Yes, chicken. Instead of Kentucky Fried or tacos con pollo, they're serving up chicken a la avian leukosis. That's chicken infected with a virus that produces cancerous tumors and lesions on the birds. In July, the U.S. Agriculture Department's Food Safety and Inspection Service rubber-stamped a demand by Tyson Foods and other multi-billion-dollar meat conglomerates to deregulate chicken processing rules so they can sell chickens diseased with avian leukosis for human consumption. And no, the huge brand-name marketers would not even be burdened by having to put a right-to-know label on the package so we consumers could know what we're buying. As always, the industry line is, "It's perfectly safe. Trust us." No. Their claim is that slaughterhouse line workers can simply cut out any tumors they see, then process the rest of the animal. There are two problems with this claim. First, avian leukosis can be a systemic disease passing through the blood, so slicing tumors doesn't necessarily eliminate the virus. Second, line workers don't have time to see tumors, much less remove them, since Trump's corporate-hugging regulators have also allowed poultry factories to speed up their processing lines to 175 birds per minute. This means each worker handles up to 3 chickens a second. As Lyndon Johnson used to say about such political hokum, they can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. To learn more, go to Food and Water Watch, foodandwaterwatch.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Will violence play a part in American elections?
I'm Tom Harbin, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
In Georgia, there have been numerous threats made against election officials and their families, officials who have attested to the accuracy of the presidential election results, including the chief election officer, Gabriel Sterling, and Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, who we note are Republicans and supporters of Trump in the election. In response to the threats, Sterling said that the president needed to step up and say, "Stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone is going to get hurt. Someone is going to get shot. Someone is going to get killed. It is not right." A Trump campaign spokesman in response said, "No one should engage in threats or violence, and if that has happened, we condemn that fully." Mr. Sterling said that for him, the straw that broke the camel's back was a threat against a 20-year-old contractor for a voting systems company who had been targeted by someone who hung a noose and declared that the worker should be hung for treason. "I can't begin to explain the level of anger I have right now over this," said Sterling. "And every American, every Georgian, Republican and Democrat alike should have that same level of anger." He continued, "Elections are the backbone of democracy, and all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this."
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because democracy and advocacy begin with you, and freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1833. That was the day that prominent abolitionists convened in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to found the American Anti-Slavery Society. They drew up a constitution demanding an immediate end to slavery. They also demanded full civil rights for people of color. These activists distinguished themselves from the American Colonization Society, which advocated repatriation of free blacks to Liberia. Coming off the heels of the Nat Turner Rebellion in 1831, much of the society's work consisted of organizing petitions, meetings, and lecture tours. These activities emphasized slavery's brutality and inhumanity and its immoral nature. They also printed and distributed anti-slavery literature like the National Anti-Slavery Standard newspaper. The society claimed 250,000 members by 1840. They formed 2,000 local chapters and published 20 journals. Founders included prominent abolitionists like William Lloyd Garrison, Arthur and Lewis Tappan, Theodore Weld, and many Quakers and free blacks. Fiery orators like Frederick Douglass and the Grimke sisters soon emerged as key leaders. These anti-slavery fighters endured mob violence, including riots and even murder, like that of Elijah Lovejoy in 1837. The society split in 1840. Garrison condemned the U.S. Constitution for its denial of freedom to African Americans. He and his supporters pushed for secession from the South if they would not abolish slavery. They also promoted women into leadership positions. More conservative elements considered this too radical. They split to form the American and Foreign Anti-Slavery Society. Despite this, the abolitionist movement grew exponentially. Anti-slavery ideas gained traction in new political parties.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
President and Vice President-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris sat for their first joint interview Thursday with CNN. To help stop the spread of the virus, Biden said,
I'm going to ask the public for 100 days to mask. Just 100 days to mask. Not forever, 100 days. And I think we'll see a significant reduction, if that occurs, with vaccinations and masking to drive down the numbers considerably.
Biden and Harris are preparing to take office as coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and deaths surge to record levels, despite some positive news about potential vaccines. Biden announced Thursday that Vivek Murthy, Surgeon General under Obama, would return to that position, but with an expanded role on the coronavirus team. Biden also confirmed that Dr. Anthony Fauci would stay on in the same role that he's had for the past few administrations and also serve as chief medical officer and member of the COVID-19 response team. The Supreme Court on Thursday told California judges to reconsider a religious liberty challenge of Governor Gavin Newsom's rules banning most indoor worship services due to the coronavirus crisis. Last week, the court ruled 5-4 that New York City's limits on churches and synagogues in neighborhoods with bad outbreaks violated the First Amendment guarantee of religious freedom, a ruling interpreted by many as a sign that California's ban on indoor services would likely fall. In related news, a pastor at a California megachurch, which continued to hold services throughout the pandemic, has died from COVID-19 a week after being hospitalized. Bob Bryant, a pastor at the Water of Life Community Church in Fontana, California, tested positive, as did his wife and son, on November 22nd. He died on Monday. There's some possible decent relief news on the horizon. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Thursday spoke for the first time since the November 3rd election about a new $908 billion coronavirus relief package. They also talked about a spending bill that Congress must pass before December 11th to avert a government shutdown. In other news, court records were unsealed Tuesday in a bribery for pardon scheme investigation, with much of the information redacted. But details are slowly coming to light. The New York Times reporting Thursday that the case involves Jared Kushner, his attorney Abby Lowell, and top Trump fundraiser Elliot Broidy. Donald Trump is still in denial about the election. On Thursday, the Wisconsin Supreme Court rejected his latest lawsuit challenging the results in Wisconsin, which President-elect Joe Biden won by nearly 21,000 votes. The justices ruled 4-3 that they wouldn't accept the case, which Trump filed directly with them, although they said he could still pursue it in a lower court. This ruling came just hours after Trump filed a separate lawsuit asking a federal court to let the Republican-controlled state legislature, rather than the voters, determine who gets the state's electoral votes. The justices came to their decision quickly, noting that Tuesday is the safe harbor date by which election challenges must be resolved under federal law. The Electoral College meets December 14th, and Congress counts its votes on January 6th. To recap, Joe Biden has won 306 electoral votes. Donald Trump garnered 232. And Joe Biden's lead over Donald Trump in the popular vote is now over 7 million. Congress has also been at work on the National Defense Authorization Act. They've tweaked it in recent days to effectively block Trump's attempt to significantly reduce troops in Germany over what he says is the country's failure to spend enough money on defense. Congress has also been at work on the National Defense Authorization Act. Donald Trump had some demands, but it looks like when you lose an election, you lose a lot of power. Trump also had previously threatened to veto the bill over included plans to remove Confederate names, monuments, and symbols from U.S. military installations. And Trump had demanded that the bill include a repeal of a tech industry liability shield known as Section 230. It looks like Trump is getting none of what he wanted, according to Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman James Inhofe. But Trump seems to be bound and determined to play out his scorched earth policy. On Thursday, the administration announced it would press ahead with an early January auction for drilling rights in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, ANWR. The auction is set for January 6th, just 2 weeks before Joe Biden's inauguration. Biden has said he'll take steps to permanently protect the refuge, which is home to migrating caribou and polar bears. And just so you know, it's not just here. A former European Parliament lawmaker from Hungary resigned from his country's ruling party after being swept up in a scandal involving what media reports called an orgy. It was broken up by police in Brussels in the midst of the coronavirus lockdown. Joseph Sajur, who on Sunday resigned his seat in the European Union's legislature, also quit Hungary's ultra-conservative Fidesz party in a one-sentence letter to the party's director, ending a 30-year career with the political party he co-founded. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit with ice fog. Oh my. Partly cloudy skies today. They say we're going to have a high in the low 50s. We'll see if we get that high. And clear skies tonight with lows in the low 30s. Winds will be light and variable throughout. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, early becoming cloudy, mostly later in the morning with showers developing later in the morning and the day. Highs in the low 50. Winds light and variable, and we're expecting almost a half an inch. Oh my gosh. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon are now at 4,028 with 38 confirmed deceased. And I would say the deceased are still undercounts, but we increase daily. Pollen is rated at none right outside the window. We are under an air stagnation watch, and the air quality index for the region is unhealthy for sensitive groups at 114 parts per million. So ice fog and bad smoky air. The daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.4 inches. Visibility is down to a half mile, and relative humidity is at 99%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. And these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 42 and partly cloudy. Rome is 54 and partly cloudy. I should have said Paris first, since we're moving around the world. But Paris is 44 and mostly cloudy. Rome is partly cloudy at 54. Kyiv is 31 with fog. Kabul is 45 with fair. I guess they got rid of their smoke. Hong Kong is 55 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 46 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia, is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California, is 47 and fair. And New York, is 50 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Egyptian authorities released yesterday, Thursday, 3 members of a leading human rights organization following widespread international criticism. Security services detained the 3 staff members of the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights, including director Gasser Abdelrazek, after the group gave a briefing to senior diplomats on November 3rd. The detention, on charges including joining a terrorist group and publishing false news, drew public objection from the UN and Western governments and triggered a broad campaign by international rights campaigners. A security source said earlier that the 3 would be released pending further investigations. There was no immediate official statement from the prosecution.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Crispian Balmer of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A judge yesterday, Thursday, indicted 444 suspected members of the Ndrangheta Mafia. I'm not going to try to pronounce that word ever again. They're from Calabria. I call them the Calabrian Mafia. On an array of charges including murder, attempted murder, extortion, attempted extortion, money laundering, and drug trafficking, a judicial source said. The trial of 355 of the defendants will start on January 13 and will be one of the largest cases to target organized crime in Italy since the so-called Maxi Processo that severely weakened Sicily's more storied Cosa Nostra mafia group in the 80s. A further 89 suspects agreed to a quick-fire trial in the same case, which will start on January 27th. And those who accept such shorter hearings get reduced sentences if found guilty. The group is based in the southern region of Calabria, the toe of Italy's boot, and has surpassed Cosa Nostra to become the most powerful mafia group in the country and one of the largest crime gangs in the world. Anticipating Thursday's ruling, a fortified courthouse has been built in the Calabrian city of Lumezia Terme, large enough to house the defendants, lawyers, prosecutors, and judges. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up on Monday. Yes, on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum,